this work. I made us worse. We fell apart 1,000 times, 1,000 times. You moved away. I'm here to stay. I wish I could go back in time, back in time. I'm so sorry that I hurt you so deep. Swear I spent the last few years just trying to change. I'm on my knees and I'm begging you, please. Is there any chance you're thinking about me? If I change my ways, babe, won't you come back to me? Make no mistakes, babe, won't you come back to me? Stop until you're here, till you're here. You're miles away. It's safe to say it's almost like you disappeared, disappeared. I'm so sorry that I hurt you so deep. Swear I spent the last few years just trying to change. I'm on my knees and I'm begging you, please. Is there any chance you're thinking about me? If I change my ways, babe, won't you come back to me?
Hello, and welcome to the Healing Element Podcast. This is season 3. I'm your host, Kai Marie, and I'm so excited to be back. Thank you for everyone who is joining live and those that will join after our live session tonight. It's so great to be back. I'm so excited for the conversation that we're going to have tonight. Tonight's topic is the connection between healing and the pregnancy journey. I am here with my very special guest, Natalie Facey. Natalie, welcome to the Healing Element podcast.
Hey, Kai. Thank you for having me. And can I just say that intro music was really hype? Like I was here like...
You were vibing. I'm glad. You know what? The music also helps to kind of calm my nerves as well. Especially, I've been away from the podcast for a while. And so now kind of getting back into the groove of it. Hey, LA, thank you so much. Glad to have you with us tonight. So for those that are joining us, you're in for a beautiful conversation that we're having tonight about healing. So please make sure you give this video a thumbs up, and please also share to people that you are connected to that could really use the information that we're going to be sharing tonight. So to introduce my very special guest tonight, Natalie is a resilience coach, birth doula, and somatic or body awareness healing practitioner. She works with people along the birthing journey, primarily with those who have gone through experiences that complicate pregnancy and childbirth. Among Natalie's clients are women and people who've gone through pregnancy or infant loss, infertility, or trauma during childbirth. Natalie's work focuses on healing the painful emotions left after those experiences, reducing the risk of complications in a future pregnancy, and restoring a sense of wholeness and trust in the body. She's a wife, mama to 2 angels, Natalia and Mateo, light worker, and advocate for the fierce liberation of women and birthing people across our planet. You can learn more about her work at nataliefacey.com, and I will put that in the comments box, but you can also find it in the description of this video. And you can also follow her on Instagram at Birth Warriors. Welcome.
Thank you.
So in case you guys have not checked out the description box, tonight we're going to be talking about how energy blocks can create hormonal imbalances in our body. And we're going to learn the steps we can take to begin to heal. So with that being said, first we want to start off, Natalie, can you tell us a little bit about the work that you do with people in our community that are interested in childbirth or have experienced loss?
Yeah. Well, thank you again for having me. And
Thank you.
as you said when you introduced me, I am a coach. I work as a doula, and I also support people. Hey, Jasna. And I also support people in their emotional healing after any traumatic or difficult or painful experience. So my clients are really across the birthing spectrum. So I work with people who aren't pregnant yet and are looking to conceive. I work with people who are pregnant. I work with people who are giving birth. And unfortunately, if there's a loss, I also support people after a loss and continuing the cycle again. So after a loss, trying to conceive, being pregnant, giving birth again. And when most of the people who come to me, it's because they are pregnant and they're experiencing a lot of anxiety. And what I support them with mostly is releasing any of the unhealed emotions that are creating the anxiety and the stress and the fear in their body, knowing that that actually can create complications on the pregnancy journey. But something else that I also focus on in my work is holistic healing, right? Because even after having a baby, those unhealed emotions are still there, which means that they're showing up in parenting. It's showing up in relationships. When you go back to work, it shows up at work. So the basis of my work, no matter what people come to me for, is ensuring that they feel healed and whole in their body. And that's something that I emphasize. Like, we're not just trying to get you pregnant. Like, that's amazing. But pregnancy and having a baby, it isn't the marker of success. Like, you are the marker of success. So when you're okay, like, you show up in spaces in that empowered state versus having imbalances wherever you go.
I love how you said that, because, so many times we've heard this story about, when are you going to have your baby? And, and the kind of pressure to kind of expand the family, if you will.
Right.
And so I love what you're saying, as far as there's so much more to it than that. And sometimes that gets lost. And sometimes we don't really know everything that goes into the whole process of trying to conceive and then during pregnancy. So I really appreciate the conversation that we're going to have tonight. And of course, all of the beautiful work that you are doing. And for our listeners tonight, if you have any questions or comments, please be sure to drop them in the comment box, and we'll make sure that we raise those concerns or questions, comments that you have. So Ellie, share with us, what led you into the path of becoming a doula and for providing support for loss or infertility?
Yeah, so I love this question so much. And I think it's the question to everyone who's on the healing path. And the answer is usually that you've gone through that experience yourself.
Very true.
Right?
Very true.
You had to heal yourself from the thing. And so you became the healer.
You got it.
Yes. So in 2015, 2016, when was it? 2015 was my first pregnancy. And so moving into March of 2016, I was in moving past my first trimester and into the second, and I experienced a pregnancy loss. So that first loss happened while I was working in the advertising industry, super busy, just lifestyle, like not really taking care of myself. I ended up changing jobs. I changed my diet, like a whole lifestyle change so that I could be healthier for a new pregnancy, right? So the next time that we tried again was in 2018. And this time I was pregnant for 6 months and went into preterm labor. So the baby was super premature. And actually the stage of the gestational stage that he was in, we actually had the option of terminating. That's how premature he was, but we didn't. We're like, we already lost one baby. We will take the 1% chance or any chance we have with this baby. So that baby was born at, shy of 6 months. We were in the NICU with him for 6 weeks, and then he made his transition. So I think that's when I had to take a really hard pause and just look at what was happening in my body, because it felt like there was more, right? I changed the diet, I changed the job, I did all of these things, but I still, only brought the pregnancy to this stage and not more, which means that my body, something was off with my body, so it wasn't supporting the pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
So in that second pregnancy, I was doing talk therapy, and I remember doing talk therapy and actually multitasking during my therapy session. So like on the phone with my therapist in a conference room late one evening, like on my laptop, like, yeah. Imbalance, right? Something was off.
Right.
Something was off. So coming out of that, I was being called to this practice called somatic therapy, which there is just so much buzz about somatics and embodiment and body work right now. So I started exploring that practice and saw that there was deep, deep healing that was happening. Like really deep healing, like stuff coming out of childhood and stuff embedded in my unconscious mind, my subconscious mind that I didn't know about. And so I had already been a coach from when I was working in advertising, and I wanted to begin to support women and birthing people who were having similar journeys as I was having. So I was trained in somatic therapy, and the doula work was so that as people were going into birth, I could be present with them, like be with them for the entire journey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's what led to that.
Thank you for sharing your story. And, you know, what kind of, I know we're going to jump into energetic blocks and get into that, but why do you have an idea as to why this conversation is not kind of discussed when people are looking to conceive? The traumas that you may experience in childhood, or even if you've experienced loss, how that can also play a role if you are looking to conceive again. It seems like it's, at least when I hear conversations like, oh, you know, just try again, you know, next time. And there's no space given to really share about the trauma of losing. And then the whole process of then trying again. What are your thoughts on as far as that conversation really not being talked about?
Yeah, that is such a good question, Kai. And I think a part of it is that there is shame associated with having a loss, or there's shame associated with infertility or any challenges, relating to pregnancy. It's that as, women or people in these bodies, there's the expectation that you just should be able to have babies, right? But there is no acknowledgement as to what's going on in our bodies that can create the imbalance. And so when we're not creating the space to heal, it's because we're just focusing on like whatever we think the goal needs to be, right? Without addressing, what's there that needs to be addressed. We don't want to face the shame. And in terms of things or other trauma happening in the past, there usually is shame associated with that as well, whether it's shame or guilt or anger. And we, like as a society, there isn't enough practice that we have in sitting with emotions and working through the emotions.
Right. And so then it's just a thing, because there is no space to kind of share what you're going through, then you just kind of internalize it, which then adds to the traumatic experience.
Exactly. And, a lot of people after a loss, they just try again, right? So because in trying again and having a baby, they feel as though the baby will bring back the joy that they lost. But I've worked with people who've had successful pregnancies and have their, as we call it, rainbow babies at home. And the grief is still there for the baby that they lost, or the grief is still there for the loss because it wasn't healed. So if nothing was done, you have more joy in your life, but you also still have that sadness or shame or guilt or whatever emotions are associated with that loss if it isn't dealt with.
So true. And I just wanted to mention right now I'm working on a project regarding grief and just how to kind of love yourself during that process and practice your self-care. And one thing within this project that I'm putting together is the importance of always remembering and never feeling that you have to kind of move on. Because many times that's what we hear, just move on, you got to keep going. But what does it mean to move on when we're looking at something linear? It means that I'm leaving something behind. And I don't want to leave that precious soul behind.
Yes.
I want to carry them with me through this journey. Yes. And so when you said that, it brought that to remembrance of, it's not about just moving on. It's how do I still honor the life that I had, so is that something that you do, that you practice in your own life, is always in remembrance?
Yeah. And I love that project. That sounds so beautiful and so necessary.
Thank you.
What it's making me think of is that as, women and birthing people become pregnant again after a loss, there's actually guilt that they experience, that they've abandoned or forgotten about the baby that they lost while they're inviting in this new life. So it's so important that you're creating space for both things, right? The grief that you experience, but also the joy that's here for you. And in terms of my own journey, like, I create space for as much of it as possible. So when there is grief coming up or anger, I start some movement exercise. Like, I might beat pillows around when it's anger. When it's grief, I might just lie in bed or start to journal or sing a sad song. Like, emotions are the bomb, and people don't realize that. Yes. Emotions are necessary. They're giving us information about something that's happening in our body, like something that has impacted us. And so by moving with that emotion, we're able to heal. And when we just, try to push it aside, that thing, that message that was trying to get our attention, it's still there, which means that it's just going to come back up in some other place, and probably like an inconvenient time. You're probably going to be triggered. Right. Inconvenient time.
No, it's true, because your body, eventually it's going to come out. We can only try to suppress those feelings, emotions for so long. So it's better to just have a space where you can release. And that's something that I saw that you had posted on your Instagram, which led to this conversation, as far as how energy blocks can create an issue with your hormones. And of course, that then can lead to other issues as well. So can you share with us, how do energy blocks or trauma affect our hormones?
Yeah. So let me just start by addressing the energy piece, because I feel like there are people who, this is definitely their everyday language. They understand what energy is.
That's very true.
They're like, yes, all the energy, let's keep talking. And then there are other people who are like, wait,
what are y'all talking about right now? I'm so glad you said that, because I get lost because I'm in that space all the time. So you're so right. Everyone does not speak that language. So I'm so happy that you said that. Yeah. So thanks for grounding me back down. Please break that down for us.
Yes. So let me just say that we are energy. Like 99.9% of our body is energy. So energy isn't some woo-woo concept. It isn't a yoga thing or meditation thing. Like, we are energy. Like, this body is energy expressed in a physical form. So just like we have water that can be expressed as steam or ice or, running liquid, we are energy expressed in this body. So let's just take that out of the way. No more issues about this being a woo-woo talk. This is scientific everyday talk.
It is. Okay? It definitely is.
So that's the first thing. And then from there, so if there are challenges in pregnancy and reproduction, it means that there is a blockage. So there is an energy blockage there. So a lot of research has been done on this, and I'll pick out a few of the things that I've learned and that I've come across. Whenever someone goes through something traumatic or difficult or painful, there's an imprint that's created in the body. And usually this imprint is created in the area of the body that's related to the function of the body, or whatever system or part of the body that was impacted the most. So that's one. So usually there's an imprint in the brain and an imprint in, whatever part of the body was affected. And to better understand this connection between the mind and the body, or what's happening, with the brain communicating with the body, if, for example, we feel burdened, like we're carrying a heavy load, like we're carrying the load of something, the energetic imprint is in the shoulders. There's usually heaviness in the shoulders, and that's an indication that you're being burdened by something. You're carrying more than you can. If we're overextended, for example, there might be discomfort in the arms or in the hands, right? If there's something having to do with some sexual trauma, there's something around the hips and the sexual organs, right? So within our body, there's this communication that's happening, but also the register of these experiences in our body when they aren't dealt with. Meaning our bodies are going to hold the memories of what happened until they're healed and until they're released.
So true. And that makes me think that, our body is always talking to us and sending us signals. That's, something's wrong, something's not right. But we've been so conditioned to kind of not listen, right? Even when we think about work and your body's like, listen, I'm tired, I'm exhausted. And what do? I got to push through. Right. Like, you have to take time off from work because mentally, emotionally, you're exhausted, but got to push through. And even, our body is selling us signals the whole time. Like, no, you need to relax and we need to go on vacation. Right. But again, we've been so accustomed, through childhood, most likely, to ignore those signals that our body is telling us.
That's such an important point. And what I want to add there is, sometimes when there are challenges in pregnancy, that's the first time that we start paying attention to our bodies.
Wow.
Right? Meaning for years, the body has been saying too much stress. For years, the body has been saying like, these foods actually don't work well with my biology. For years, the body has been communicating, but it isn't until we're bringing children into the world that we start paying attention.
Wow.
And the part of that is where our society places value, right? So we know that we need to work and produce. So even if we are tired, even if we're losing sleep and eating at our desk, we're going to keep working and producing because that's where you get the brownie points, right? And pregnancy, when you're at that stage, when you're ready to become pregnant, like that's sort of like the it's like on the pedestal of womanhood or adulthood, right? And so when we start to, when we're ready to bring children into the world, we will pay attention to our bodies then because of how important it is to society. To us, but also to society.
To society, yeah. And it makes me think too, when it's for someone else, but it's not just for us, but it's like, I'm doing this for someone else. Sometimes then it's like, okay, I really got to pay attention now because it's not about me. And I think that's another part of that whole conditioning is that, oh, you'll be fine. But if it's for somebody else, then you really have to pay attention and make sure that you're doing whatever you have to do for that person. So I love how you said that. And Natalie, now what part of this, if you are trying to conceive or you've experienced loss, and now maybe there is a fear now that you have of trying to conceive again, or as you said, maybe there's a fear coming up, something from like an inherited trauma, a trauma from childhood that you're now dealing with. How may that impact your ability to conceive or have a healthy pregnancy?
So doctors or fertility specialists, they'll, as you're having challenges in pregnancy, they might encourage you to reduce your stress, right? So it's always like reduce your stress and let's see what happens, or make some changes to your diet and let's see what happens, right? And firstly, like stress, I think it was according to the American Medical Association, like stress is the cause of probably like 90% of the health conditions that we have. And what I want to add to that is that it isn't like, blanket stress, taught to be strong and not vulnerable. Yes, exactly. So it isn't just stress. It isn't like having a busy life with like a lot of motion. It's like, I think of stress as emotional distress. Right. So what are the things underneath that haven't been addressed? So when I'm in a conference room on a phone call with my therapist and multitasking, working while everyone else has gone home, that was stress. While we're talking about ways to reduce my stress and whether or not I'm stressed, I was experiencing stress.
Right? Yeah, like I gotta start doing this and that, and I gotta start. How am I gonna fit this in my schedule?
Right. So what I like to go into isn't just like what the person is doing, not just the behaviors, but why. Because if for example, someone asked me to give up the busyness, I don't know if I would have survived that pregnancy. Because in my system was the trauma response. I was in the fight and the flight. I couldn't be still. I couldn't sit. There was no stillness. There was busyness because I needed to ensure that whatever happened before, it wasn't going to happen again. So not only are we bringing the trauma and the unhealed emotions from the loss or the infertility, we're bringing stuff from childhood. And I love that LA mentioned that we're taught to be strong and not to be vulnerable, because I wasn't accepting help from people. I needed to show people, including my husband, that I was capable of doing things. And where's that coming from? It's being the strong Black woman and not having to depend on other people, not wanting to be vulnerable. And pregnancy is a time in your life when there really is surrendering that needs to happen. There really is opening your arms and accepting the community and the tribe. There really is just sitting your butt down and letting someone else do the thing, right?
Right.
And I could not do that because of the activation in my system, being traumatized and feeling as though I was now incapable, right? Told to be on bed rest, like what? Meaning I should just like sit still and don't go to work.
Right. What does that even mean?
It was torture for me.
Right.
And the reason it was torture was the unhealed emotions that was very active. I was in fight and flight. And so in pregnancy after loss or infertility, we're carrying these emotions. So no matter if you're, going to prenatal yoga or doing massages, whatever you're doing, if the thought and the emotions, if that's still running, like a crazy person inside of your head, it means that you need to go even deeper. It means that what's lying in your subconscious, what's sitting in your body, the emotions that are unhealed, those need to be healed. Those need to be released.
So true. And if you are finding this conversation helpful, please make sure you give this video a thumbs up, and please also share to your network. Because, this is a conversation as we kind of started our talk tonight that's not really being talked about a little bit more now, especially with the work, Natalie, that you are now doing. But we want to just create space that this is kind of like a conversation that's regular, like a regular conversation that we have anytime we're talking about conceiving, childbirth, that we can talk about the traumas surrounding not only the pregnancy journey, but also what happened to that individual's body before they became pregnant, because that also plays a huge role in the experience that they may have, and also the support system while pregnant. Right. And so even when you're talking about, when in the workplace, right? Because if you have multiple projects going on, it's like, I'm still responsible for these projects. I still have to show up. I can't show any weakness, especially if you have like a leadership type of role. So that adds on to the stress. So it's important to have spaces where you can have a healthy dialogue and share if you're feeling overwhelmed, to start having these conversations. And through your work, Natalie, do you sense that people are starting to talk a little bit more about it and not so, close to the chest of what they're experiencing, but saying, listen, I'm stressed out. I don't know where to start. And I need help.
Yeah.
Do you find that vulnerability piece, as LA had said, that's starting to surface a little bit more?
Yeah, I think obviously 2020 was crap, but one of the things that came out of it, thank you, Jessica. Jessica says doing both. Yes. One of the things that came out of 2020, which was so powerful, is that we're beginning to, focus on our wounds and emotional health, mental health, and the fact that we're not robots and we need to create space for healing. We need to have like safe spaces where we can be vulnerable. So I would say that compared to previous years, there's definitely more conversation. in terms of if it's happening in the workplace, I sense that there's still separation that's created there. Meaning, as I work with clients, they have a space to just like let all of it go. Right. I don't know if they have that in their work environment, especially if they are in leadership positions. Right. There is room for vulnerability, but you have to more or less keep it together. Right. Which is why it's so important that, as you're in your pregnancy, like even with your partner, there might be things that feel uncomfortable to admit to your partner. So there has to be someone that you can come to and just be all of yourself without worrying about being judged or criticized.
So true. We all need that safe space that we can go to and to be vulnerable, because that's important. We just can't carry the weight on our own, especially when you're going through such a vulnerable process, which is pregnancy. And so for those that are listening tonight, and they have maybe experienced loss or infertility or currently trying to conceive, what steps would you have for them so they can begin to unpack any blocks or traumas that they may have experienced? And maybe they don't even know, right? Sometimes you don't even know. You think that that's just who I am. It's like, no, actually, that's trauma.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so, I just want to say, that's why it's so important to be gentle with yourself on this journey, because things can pop up that you didn't even realize.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because something else that I wanted to share is that, on one hand, things that can impact the pregnancy journey, it's the unhealed emotions and the trauma that you're still holding, right? So that leads to behaviors and also just like the hormones that are released in your body that impact pregnancy or even prevent fertility, right? So on the one hand, that's happening. And then other things that contribute to complications in pregnancy, it's the physical environment that we're in, right? It's the pollutions and the toxins and the fluoride in the water and the Wi-Fi radiation and the fumes that we're breathing. It's all of these things that are compounding and just really depleting the resources in our body, right? And so how I like to think of it is, the body will always prioritize I use the expression, the main organism, meaning us, right? The body will always prioritize us. And if there aren't enough resources for us, how is the body going to create new life, right? If there isn't enough iron and this sort of nutrient and all the things that are needed to create life, how does the body have the resource to do that? So it's ensuring that on all aspects, physical, emotional, mental, the body is resourced enough to hold that new life. And for a more specific example on the emotional piece, which just goes into a whole other or a deeper world, deeper down the rabbit hole, when the body, let's say that someone is going through pregnancy after loss or after something traumatic, and there are all these emotions that are coming up that are really difficult to work through, the body is still prioritizing you. So some people go into preterm birth as a way of the body protecting them from just the emotions and the torment that they continue to experience. So there's this amazing book written by Dr. Christian Northrup, and it has studies about the complications that people experience in childbirth and the different either beliefs or behaviors that are used as markers that this person will likely have some complication, right? And some of it is, I don't even know if I want to be a mother or a parent, right? It's that ambivalence, it's that wanting it but not knowing if it's safe, not knowing if you're going to be supported, not feeling as though you can do it on your own, feeling as though it's going to come into conflict with your career, right? So on all levels, the body needs to be in alignment, and it's important to have the support to have that alignment on the physical, emotional, mental, on all levels of the body, because the body will always prioritize you. And I don't want to say that it like the body will release a pregnancy that doesn't allow for the sustenance of the main organism of the person holding the pregnancy.
You know, when you said alignment, it made me think, and I have not shared this at all on my social media platforms or spoke to really too many people about it, unless it's my close circle. But the whole process around fertility, and that's something that I was told by, since I was younger, as far as that I may have issues having children.
Yeah.
So I don't want to get into detail of why right now. That's not, I don't feel comfortable doing at this point. But when you said about being alignment, I think that's so important because for so long, I thought I didn't want children. But it was as I began to kind of work through my own trauma, it was more so coming from being told that you may not be able to, or if you are able to, you wouldn't be able to carry full term. So there was that fear there that I was like, I don't want to go and want that thing that I can't have. And then there was the shame component of, I'm supposed to be able to do this. Like, this is the one thing that this body should be able to do, and it can't do it. And so, but through working through that whole, and it's continuous work through that process, I began to then say, okay, I got to get my mind, body, spirit, my emotions all in alignment. And, and yes, that's what I was told, but that doesn't mean that's not a no. I just heard no. I just heard, no, it can't happen. But when you said alignment, that really resonated with me because that's what you want to have happen when you're looking to bring life into this world. So thank you so much for saying that.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. I think your example really rooted us in, how it shows up in people's lives. Yeah.
And so that's one, I mean, first, I love the work that you're doing. And then as I kind of shared a little bit here and there of my personal story, I started hearing other folks say, oh, I was told the same thing. And it's more common than I thought, because sometimes you feel like you're on this island by yourself and nobody else in the entire world is going through it or experiencing it. So grateful for the work that you were doing. And so did you have, were there any other steps or tips that you wanted to provide for those listening that they can begin to release those blockages?
Yeah. So the first thing that I want to say is that healing doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be re-traumatizing, and it doesn't have to be as painful as people expect that it will be. Meaning what leads to fear, or even just like putting the trauma in the closet and not looking at it, is the expectation that you'll go through it all over again in order to heal it. And healing can be slow, it can be beautiful, and it will put you in a kind of relationship with yourself and your body that you didn't even realize was possible. So I just wanted to name that because I know that people resist healing because they're afraid of what comes with it, right? In terms of things that can be done, highly recommend working with someone who's trained. And, there are different forms of therapy. It's not just talk therapy, Reiki or energy healing is a form of therapy. So I love recommending to people to move towards what they're actually drawn to. So for me, dance, music therapy, singing, that is incredibly healing. And I don't know why I call it a part of my blueprint. I help the clients that I work with identify like what's in their healing blueprint. I don't know why that's a part of mine, but just put on some African drumming and it's over. Like I'm in some other world.
I love it. Of course,
that might be a part of our ancestry, and I don't need to understand why it's healing. I just know that when I start to move my body, I release what I'm holding.
Yes.
So highly recommend just beginning to tune in to what you love, whether it's like walking in nature or being by the ocean or being in the mountains. Like that is medicine, right? Tune into what that is and create more and more space in your life for that. I like to think of healing as sort of like a scale, like all of the terrible things. And when you start adding these beautiful things, it just starts to outweigh the terrible things so that there's more resource in your body to work through challenges as they come up. Like that's resilience. Resilience isn't like roughing and toughing through everything. It's having space to heal and creating some resource in your body so that you can work through that thing when it comes up again.
Yes, I'm so glad that you said that resilience is just not constantly plowing through.
Exactly.
Fighting. I love that you said that. Oh my gosh, yes. And so do you have a question? How do you help clients manage the potential feeling of overwhelm by how big it may feel and potentially pressure of a feeling of urgency around conception?
Yeah. So feeling of overwhelm and urgency around conception. Yes. The urgency usually comes up if someone is getting older and they are accepting the belief that our bodies stop producing at a certain point, right? So, and for different people that age might be different. So the sense of like, let's do it now, it's the fear that we're running out of time. So what I like to tell my clients is that a couple of things. One is find evidence of other people who have become pregnant at a later stage, because that will sort of solidify the belief in your body that is possible for you too. And what creates fertile ground for pregnancy, it's actually optimal health and not age. So in the Amazon, there are indigenous women who are having children along with their grandchildren having children.
Wow.
Right. So I love hearing that because I'm like, okay, we have time.
Right. I love that.
We have time. Like it's health. So even if someone is super young and they're not healthy, their body might not be able to sustain a healthy pregnancy. So work on, optimal wellness versus forcing yourself because of age. Right. So that's the recommendation that I have. And of course, if there are challenges and you're getting older, there are other things that can be done, scientific things that can be done to support fertility, even if you're getting older. But I think it's important to get yourself in the optimal state for pregnancy, because it could lead to complications if, you haven't done that work first. So that's one. And overwhelm is always because it feels like there's some conflict between the time that you have, the resources that you have, and the amount of things that you have to do. So it's really just having someone, or working through, setting out on a piece of paper or something, just all the things that are on your plate. And there are things that you might need to delegate. There are things that you might realize that they're not important at all. Right? So it's having the support to create some sort of day-to-day balance that's going to be sustainable for you.
Beautiful. And to that point, when you are working with your clients, do you ever sense that sometimes that feeling of overwhelm or the urgency that is coming from outside pressures too? So they may already have their own pressure, but maybe also from family or from friends that plays a part as well.
That's often the case. It could be from the partner. And even if the partner doesn't say it, even if the partner, let me say it in this way, it could be the perception of what the partner wants, or it could actually be the partner saying, I'm ready. It could be, the mothers and the mother-in-law saying, when are you going to have a baby? It could be that. Other times it's people in your surroundings, like your senior peers or the people that you went to college with having babies, and there's this pressure that you need to advance your life and now, start your family, like your family wasn't already started. So it's
like technically, you're not a family until there are babies.
Exactly. So I love that you added that because it's often external pressure.
as
It's
well. Wow.
often the woman or the birthing person trying to anticipate and accommodate the needs of others and
Hmm.
placing those needs over theirs.
Hmm. And I think that's why it's so important um, for people to, you're in a relationship with someone and you're both are trying to conceive or start a
Mhm.
family, that you have that open dialogue with
Mhm.
that person. And that is your safe space to go to. So that way,
Yeah.
when the world is kind of saying, you need to do this, you need to do that. And sometimes you may not have the energy to just say, leave me alone.
Yes.
That person can do that for you and say,
Mhm.
we got this under control.
Yes.
Everybody relax. Sometimes you need that. And again, that's
Mhm.
showing that vulnerability and that you don't have to carry this all by yourself.
Yeah.
Because, pregnancy, that really is a village. You need a village
Mhm.
of people around you to help
Exactly.
get you through that journey.
Exactly.
And so, Nellie, is there anything else that you would like to share with those that are listening today? And thank you guys so much. Thank you for
Mhm.
all the thumbs up and sharing as well.
Mhm.
And again, we're going to be kind of coming to a close. So please make sure if you have any questions, comments, just drop them in the chat box. We really appreciate that. If you are listening after the live version, you can also still share
Mhm.
the video and make sure you give a thumbs up so that people can hear how they can begin to heal
Mhm.
during their pregnancy journey. So I know I
Yeah.
said a lot, and I started with asking you a question. So I'll just quickly repeat the question. So, are there any words that you would like to leave with our listeners this evening?
Yeah. There are two things that I wanted to address, or that are top of mind now. And the first is, you know, to follow up on a question that you asked earlier, like, next steps. So that first one is getting professional help. So you can work with a talk therapist, for example. Essentially, it's important to understand what's under the surface
Mm-hmm.
that might be leading to emotional distress or emotional imbalance in your body, right? So you can work with a talk therapist or a psychotherapist for that. The one limitation that I want to name about talk therapy is that it's all happening on the mental level, meaning it requires you already knowing what's going on in order for you to articulate it. The reason why somatic therapy is, so important in trauma work is because you're accessing parts of your body that you might not even have language for, right? Because there is more that you get to include in the conversation. Your body gets to be a part of the conversation and not just your mind. So we essentially talk in images and we talk in colors and shapes and sensations because that's the communication of the body. And when we have this conversation using the way that the body can communicate, then you're able to access the wisdom and the hurt and the resources and the healing that the body is holding. So, highly recommend exploring somatic therapy as a way to support you in your healing because it's important. And this is the second point, it's important to understand what's motivating you, like, what are the things in the background that you're not aware of that's leading to even your desire to become pregnant? So I released a podcast the other day that I was so nervous about that I had to send it to a close friend. And the title was, "Why do you want to have a baby?" And I was like, oh my
Ooh.
gosh, people are going to hate me. I'm going to lose all my audience.
But that's the important question.
It's such an important
Yeah.
question. And I'm going to like squeeze in a little part of my story because the reason why I wanted to become pregnant the first time, it's because I wanted a reason to leave the advertising industry. I wanted something that was so important that
Mhm.
it would force me to become a coach full time and to be able to work from home and be a mother, right? And I was like, all right, once I have my baby, I won't have any choice. Nothing to keep me from leaving this industry, right? So I was like forcing myself into that. And other people have all kinds of reasons, right? Sometimes it's because they think it will bring, happiness to the relationship or resolve some challenge with the partner. It's because they feel the pressure. It's because it's the next thing you do after you get married. And when you get to the root of that reason, then you're not running after pregnancy and feeling dissatisfied in your life. You get to actually fulfill the thing that you want through having a child. And having a child is like the icing on the cake, or the vegan icing on the gluten-free cake in my case. Right? You get to have the joy and not feel completely defeated not having children and not being pregnant, and keep pushing yourself until you get to that.
I love how you said that.
Yeah. So that's it. Like I teach like holistic healing. Like the baby isn't the goal. The baby is beautiful and amazing. Like they're like joy, of course, babies. But like you're not going to be unhappy until you have a baby. Because even after you have a baby, like you're going to be a parent. You know, there's some stage when they become less cute.
And you're like, why did I do this again?
Exactly. So you want to experience wholeness in your life, because I love this quote, and I have the book over there. Wherever you go, there you are. Right? You're going to show up in the boardroom, in your relationship, at the family barbecue. And if those unhealed emotions are there, they're showing up with you. Right. So when you're in that state of wholeness and sovereignty and just like in alignment with yourself, then you get to be that in all aspects of your life. Yeah.
Beautifully said. And it's when you said wholeness, it reminded me of a conversation that I was having with this woman that I was sharing with her. How do I explain? It's more than a friendship. It's like sisterhood.
Yeah.
And I was telling her, you know, now that we want to start a family, and she was saying kind of things that I need to start to do. Yeah. And she said, the process that you're going through right now is about being whole. Exactly what you just said. And that I was just kind of like, what? Because I thought the process was the pregnancy journey.
Yeah.
And she said, your process is becoming whole with the woman that you are. And I was like, whoa.
Oh my gosh.
And so when you said that, it brought that into remembrance. So thank you so much for that. It is about beginning to appreciate our bodies and love our bodies, and no longer neglecting what we're feeling, the different sensations. So the work that you're doing, thank you so much for doing that and for sharing your story. And for those that are listening, if they want to connect with you, which I'm sure they do, how can you, again, please give your social media where they can reach out to you that way, your YouTube, Instagram, and also, of course, your website.
Yeah, so my website is nataliefacey.com. So it's NATALEE, F as in Facebook, so FACEY.com. My Instagram is @thebirthwarriors, all together. YouTube, I think I'm coaching for Birth Warriors on YouTube. And there's an event that I'm having this Saturday at 2 p.m. It's a healing circle for anyone who's gone through loss, infertility, or any kind of trauma, and they're on the healing journey. So I'm going to include the link to that. If I include it here, does it show up in?
It should. Okay. So yeah, definitely put that in there. And so that way people can, if you have any trouble, just let me know.
Okay, so I just added that, and I'll also add it to my website so that, you know, people can easily get that. It's not an Eventbrite, but I'll add it to my website so people can easily access it as well.
Perfect. And what I'll do is I'll also add it to the description box too.
Thank you.
Oh, here we go. Got it.
Thank you.
Because this is so important, the work that you are doing. So we definitely want to share and get the word out. So that people can know that this type of healing exists, and that there are spaces that you can go to begin to heal and start to release maybe traumas and energy blocks that you may have. And so as we come to a close, if anyone has any other comments, please make sure you drop them in. Thank you all so much for joining us. Yes, she's an amazing. Thank you so much. And so for those that are listening again, as I've said a few times through this video, please make sure you give this video a thumbs up and please share, and please go and follow Natalie on her Instagram. You can find all of her contact information in the description box. And Natalie, I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It was an absolute pleasure to host you.
Thank you.
And you are welcome back anytime.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for the work that you're doing. I know when we spoke maybe a couple of weeks ago, I shared that an event that you led was a real activator and opener for me. I was like, all right, she's talking about all these things that I've been afraid of talking about. I'm just going to step into it right now. And so thank you for your work. This is really a co-creation, right? Because you showing up has led to me showing up, and here we are together.
Yes. And it's so funny you say that, because when you and I had talked about bringing you on the podcast and having this conversation, I remember saying, I'm not going to talk about my personal story because I don't want to share that. And then I'm like, so by the way, but I think that just shows how you always create space, just the energy that you give for people to feel comfortable to share. And that always then helps another person with sharing their story and beginning to heal.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you for everyone that has listened and joined us. For the time went by so fast, like an hour flew by. So please make sure you guys join me next Tuesday right here at 8 p.m. I'll be posting my special guests that I will have on. And so I look forward to talking to you all again, and welcome back to season 3 of the Healing Element podcast. You guys have a great night.
Bye, everyone.